let's continue. Last time we talked a lot about the line of infinite light that comes down, which we said is like the confidence in a person's life. And to understand the light as part of history, we explained the line as part of history. So we explained a lot of things about culture regarding hierarchy and the breaking down of hierarchy. So that was from a very wide perspective, looking at world history and understanding that the way it's described in Jewish mysticism is that that's the line that comes down from the infinite light. And in a certain sense, it's the best approximation to what Hashem wanted to actually do. Why is it only an approximation? Why can't it be exactly what he wanted, exactly what he planned? Simple answer is because he also gave free will.
We're interpreting it.
Okay. So the free will allows us to input ourselves into this plan that he made. He made the plan, including the idea that free agents, like human beings, would contribute to it.
You need coffee, right? Would he
Yes.
be happy if we somehow, naturally, got to exactly what he wanted?
So we try all the time to make it closer and
Is
closer.
that his ideal, or he doesn't mind?
So the idea is that we're not trying,
He's a nice guy.
in a certain sense, there's no clear indication in the Torah exactly how this is going to work. And the Rambam has these famous words at the end of the Yad HaChazakah that he says, and these things, when he talks about the end of days, he says these things, you can't know how they'll be until they'll be. Why? Because there's an element of interpretation in it. So it's not even like saying that there's this ideal and then there's the approximation to the ideal. It's approximately what Hashem wanted, but the ideal is what comes out, not what the plan was. Because the plan was to allow for interpretation. So ideally, you could say the opposite, that if nobody would contribute to interpreting the plan, that's when it would cease to be ideal. Then the world would not meet Hashem's expectation. And we've talked a lot about this. We talked about this when we talked about the notion that that the Medrash says that Hashem created worlds and then He destroyed them, saying these don't find favor in my eyes. These are not what I was thinking of. And so we said, why? First of all, how did the sages even know that this is what happened? Okay, so they have a verse that they interpret. But the reason that they even tell us this, we said from a Hasidic point of view, from the psychological point of view, is that a person has to feel that it's okay to throw things out. It's okay to have a plan, to try to achieve it, and then not to have it function the way you want it, not to have it completed the way you'd like it to, and to even be willing to throw it out. That was the chiddush of this world, that it wasn't afraid to be thrown out. All the other worlds were like so full of themselves that they said, if you throw us out, there's no world. But this world, it has built into it this feeling, this ability to self-deprecate, if you want, and to say, I'm not such a big find. And it's okay to throw me out. I learned that it's okay. It's part of the divine plan, that some things don't work out the way you want them to. So the world has built into it this feeling that it's okay not to succeed. We just try again. It's like built into the fabric of this world. So this whole thing of interpretation, there's a lot to be said about it, but right away it should strike everybody as that this is the essence of what it means to live by Torah.
When you say interpretation, you mean the sages and the people
Right.
You don't mean
People
free
interpret.
will. You mean the way people.
We have free will in how we interpret.
So that's basically what you mean.
Well, so the question is, what's the main thing I should use my free will for? So in each realm, in each dimension of my being, I use it for something else. In action, free will is that I can overcome my evil inclination. My evil inclination is really my nature. Actually, I was sitting at a birthday for bringing for one of the shluchim in Ramot. So one of the older Hasidim there said, the Yetzer Hara doesn't change. You just get more tired and you're not so inclined to follow it. But the same thing that burnt in you when you were 18 burns in you when you're 60. There's no difference. Mm-hmm. It's just that you're too tired to actually go and do it. Yeah, that's the benefit of old age. You can't pursue your cravings as easily as you did.
My first thought was I'm too tired to fight it.
Yeah, you might be more tired to fight it, but it's also too tired to get you up and make you move and do something. Unless it's chocolate. But that chocolate's not a real. It's not a real Yetzer Hara, We just make it up, right? Real Yetzer Hara is for a real Avera, for a real something that you're not supposed to do. So, in any case, in every dimension of my being, the free will shows up in a different way. In my thought, the free will is how I understand Torah.
Or what thoughts to follow?
Well, first of all, the positive part of it, not just getting over negative things, but the creativity. That when I learn Torah, I can see it as something that needs to be interpreted, it needs to be explained. The explanation I use, the creativity I bring into that explanation. So the whole idea that there's Torah Shebechtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh is very much similar. That there's a written Torah and an oral Torah. It's very much similar to the idea that Hashem has this plan, but the main ingredient in the plan is how people are going to actually execute it. The written Torah is like set in stone, but the main part of the written Torah is how it's going to form the oral Torah, how it's going to be interpreted. It's built into it.
Is there no boundaries in that place?
Of course there's boundaries. And just as the same as in this world, there are boundaries. Right. And you can plan to do, you can try to do things that just won't work. But the idea is that that's built into it. So if Hashem would give the Torah and nobody would sit down and learn it and question and ask and try to say, so how does this apply here? How does it apply there? What do I learn from the fact that these two words are separated or they're together? There were a few examples in the Daf Yomi the last week. So what's the point? How did the Maggid say this? He said, it's like a child is playing a game of hide and seek, and nobody comes to look for him. So if you become a robot, like if you just become an automaton, and you don't exercise the free will in pursuing what Hashem wants, so you've missed what Hashem wants. You've never found it. Because to say what does He want as something that's like set in stone, these are the plans, you can't deviate from them. That's like to make the whole world meaningless. The whole point of the plan was to inspire. The whole point of the plan was to bring people to do something great. Okay, so you gave the minimum in the plan, really. You gave the minimum you need to know in order to be inspired to think about how to interpret this properly and in the right way.
But who decides the limits? Because there are rabbis today who even bring, there's so many ways to interpret halacha, and you can interpret it very chesed, or you can interpret it, and some of us will say that's already sounds questionable to me. Who decides? But maybe that's holy because they're.
So here we're not talking about halacha. We're talking about our lives.
But it's also Torah, you're saying.
Talking about our lives, like how do you know? Let's say the Rebbe suddenly decides there's something called shlichus.
Yeah.
Where did he get that from?
You're not talking about Torah because you keep referring to interpreting Torah.
Sure, because everything in Yiddishkeit comes from Torah. It doesn't necessarily have to be
more
halacha.
academic interpretation, not halacha l'maaseh, because I was
Not
going
just
to ask.
academic is maybe something not so great, but I'm talking about Torah of life. Like, what should I do with my
Is
life?
the Torah Shabbal Peh also that same activity that we're doing?
Let's say there's a guy,
Interpreting
there's a dentist, and he's sick and tired of what I think we talked about this last week. And he's tired of what he does, because even though he's supposed to be a freelancer, he's supposed to be a person who has a free occupation, as it's called. He's not under some system.
Right.
And he's supposed to be expressing himself and so on. It becomes very tiresome, becomes very repetitive. So where does he inspire himself from? Where does he find new meaning in it? So he finds new meaning from Torah. So obviously it's not a halachic side of Torah. It's to learn Torah in such a way that it applies to dental work.
I understand, but I'm saying Torah Shabbal Peh, the interpretation and the dynamics of halacha is not the same activity. That God has a will and we're trying to understand it and make it
And
practical.
also, but I'm not talking about how to do that, because that's not.
It's a whole separate.
That's like saying that I would interpret for the dentist how he's supposed to work. I'm not a dentist, so I can't do that. I can talk about the Torah side of it, but I can't tell him how this applies.
Mhm.
So if I'm not posek, so for me to say you do this or you do that is almost meaningless.
Okay.
Everybody has an opinion, of course. So opinions are not very, not very weighty. It's not like that important. I also have an opinion.
Opinion is interpretation.
What?
Opinion is the same. as
Probably
interpretation.
not. It's more like a guess,
Oh gosh, you're not really.
because I'm not
informed.
really in that area.
Mhm.
Okay. So in any case, the line that comes down is on the one hand it's history, and history is open-ended in that sense, meaning there's a lot that could happen. Many things could happen, and certainly as the line comes down, the movement of the line is dependent, you could say, on us, on our confidence, on our ability to move things. Because the line by nature is moving, it's extending, it's coming from above to below, from the great circle that represents God's infinite light, and it's coming into the void. So it has movement in it. So it represents the powers that move history. But in the same way that it applies in the general for all of humanity, it also applies for each individual. And so each individual has a lifeline, has a story of his life. And there are times during the story that you're moving, that you have the wherewithal, the strength to advance, to move somewhere. But then there are times when suddenly you feel that you've come to some kind of, we'll see in a moment, it's called a button. Somebody pushed your button. So you come to a certain state in your life where you see that, or you're supposed to be able to understand that what you're being asked to do is not to push forward, but rather to have faith. Not to push forward with confidence, but rather to have faith. And you have to see it. And it's not that hard to tell when you come to that point. It's not a point necessarily of resistance. Because most of the time, if there's resistance, you just have to push harder. It's rather that something else is happening. Something else is stopping you. It's not resistance from the outside. It's more like resistance from the inside. That I've come to like express everything that I can at this point. There's nothing there right now for me to bring out. So when I come to that point, it's described in the Arizal's Kabbalah that the line ejects a circle. There's a circle that comes out. And we said that the circle represents faith. The line represents the confidence and the trust and the self-confidence and trust in others and so on. And the circle is faith.
And it ejects another circle? A new circle?
A new circle. Inside the circle, there's now a new circle. And this keeps happening in life. That you progress some more, and then there's a new circle, and you progress more, and there's another circle. So what we want to look at today is what the difference between these circles inside and the circle that you came from on the outside is. Okay, so let's read it. The great circle, line 242. The great circle that circumspects the space of the contraction, as it were, represents and is the source of faith that all is very good in practice at every single moment, always. For it is situated absolutely above time and space. So the great circle is a feeling that everything's fine. In general. It's a feeling that comes from above time and space. This is what we said you do when you in a certain sense, cleanse yourself of every single plan you have and everything you might think, even your beliefs. There's only one thing left. Hashem is good. That's all. And that's above time and space. That has nothing to do with your particular circumstances at this moment. It's got nothing to do with where you are at this moment. That's why that circle always remains on the outside. It's always circumspecting you from the outside. That's the image that the Arizal gives. There's this big circle on the outside. There's a line that extends in, and each time the line extends a little bit more, it draws another circle on the inside. And sometimes you have to recall that there's a big circle on the outside. The big circle on the outside is the feeling that really, like Avraham, it's going above time and space. Like you took him, you lifted him out, and you put him above all the astrology and everything that Avram saw as his logical scheme and how his rational mind worked. And for him, astrology was rational. Those were the limits of thought at that time. And he lifts him above that, and he says, now you're outside of time and space, and I want to show you that everything's good. It's fine. It's serene, it's calm, it's good, there's no problems. It's not being connected to where I am right now at this moment. It's just a general feeling that is outside all my circumstances. That Hashem is good. And that eventually I'll see that it's all good. Eventually. I don't know when. Could be in a million years. I don't know. That's the great line. The great circle. It's called the Gula Gadol.
But you're saying Avram was taken out of the original circle of light?
Okay. It was taken into Hashem's infinite light. And in Hashem's infinite light, the only thing you see is that Hashem is good. That's it. Only Hashem is good. The circle that is ejected by the ray of light, the line at every stage of its descent, and within the empty void represents the faith that in every stage of the line of life, things will certainly be good with visible and revealed good when God wills it so. Allowing the individual to accept all the passing events of life with true equanimity, and with the psychological calm that indeed things will be good. Remember, we talked about that when you're in the great circle, there's no you anymore. There's only Hashem, and Hashem's good. So therefore, it doesn't concern you if you'll live to see that goodness. You know that eventually that goodness will appear. The infinite goodness of Hashem will appear. But it might not be related to you, because there's no you there in any case. But the circles that come out of the line, that are ejected at every stage, they have to do with your particular circumstance, the way it is right now. And that's a different level of faith. That's the faith to say, or the ability to say, that even though what I'm seeing here is not what I planned, and it doesn't seem good to me, and so on, I will see that this is revealed good. It's much harder. It's much harder. The great circle, you is there like just to give you support. It's sort of like a natural state in reality. You just need to connect to it. But here's the clincher here is that you have to eject the circle. That when you're advancing, you have to bring that circle out. It doesn't happen naturally by
When it
itself.
comes out, it looks exactly like the other circle, just inside of it. I'm saying the
Okay.
Kav is still inside that
Right,
circle.
the Kav is inside.
With the space.
No, the Kav then has to continue.
But I'm saying there's still a space between the Kav and the inner circle.
No, it doesn't
Oh.
skip. The Kav doesn't skip anymore.
So now
We'll
it's
see in a moment what it
piercing.
looks like.
Okay.
This one,
I don't know what it looks
Goes to you have to be your emotions.
You have to eject it.
But he said this is.
In this sense, you're creating faith. You're taking it. In a certain sense, you have a mold. The mold is the great circle around. It gives you a structure for what you're looking for in terms of what faith means. But it's up to you to create that circle.
And it's a different kind of bitachon.
It's not bitachon, it's faith. And it's a different type of faith. Because the faith here is to say, like some people say, it's to make believe. Some people understand it this way, mistakenly. I'll explain in a moment why it's a mistake. But a lot of people, when they hear this, they think in the beginning you're supposed to imagine that everything is good.
Like act as if.
No, it's the way, it's what you
just
do.
create a virtual reality. No, the circle doesn't create a reality. The circle is an expression, actually, of how you're dealing with what there is. You're not, again, the whole idea is that I'm not running away from what there is. I'm just taking what there is in a different way. I'm placing the burden on how I react and not on what reality is showing me. It could be the reality is showing me a very uncomfortable situation. But this requires my work, my psychological work.
Mm-hmm.
I can't count on Hashem here. In a certain sense, I can't fall back. If I fall back again, it's like saying, in a certain sense, it's like going back to the beginning. If I want to fall back to the general, to the great circle around me, to the all-encompassing circle, to the all-encompassing faith, in a certain sense, I'm retracting from life. But the circle that's ejected inside the void, as the line descends, is dealing with life. Is dealing with what the circumstances are at this moment. And what does it mean? And that's what the Baal Shem Tov called equanimity. The Baal Shem Tov talked about
What is it in Hebrew?
Ishtavut. When he talked about first Torah in Tzavat Arivash, very first Torah that is there, he talks about that every person has to reach a state of equanimity. Shiviti Hashem v'negiti me. And he says whether people praise you or whether they, I wrote here the other word, whether
Smirch
they
you.
ridicule you, it should be the same to you. Because the question is not what they're doing, but rather how you're taking it.
So many times when the people think, when they see you, they think you're in the great circle. That it's not the way you live it, you just imagine, or you just, No?
So if you're leaving,
They think you're just...
maybe somebody from the outside cannot tell
Right.
the difference, but I think that you from the inside can tell the difference. You know exactly how much more difficult this is. So to bring out one of these circles is a lot harder.
Would you
But-
say Vayidom Aharon?
Right. Exactly. It's exactly the example. That there are certain places in life where you have to learn how to be silent, and not to be forced by reality to curse and swear against it and take it hard. You have to learn how to accept it.
How would it look different on a person if they did the ejecting the circle or returning to the circle? Would you see it on them?
That's what I'm saying. I
If
don't think
you
it's
would
from the
remain,
outside.
the big difference in the end is either you remain committed to what you're doing.
I think it's just an internal thing. If the behavior could
No,
look the same.
is that
Could
when
be.
you finish with the circle, if you only went back to the great
Mhm.
circle, you don't remain committed to the path you were on. You may
Look
actually
for a way
have
out
to.
or something.
You may come and say, "Well, it doesn't matter anyway."
Mm.
Here it's saying, "No, this is the right way. This is what I want to
Mm.
pursue," and it's true that every once in a while, there's one of these points where faith is needed and not confidence.
This sounds like a good way to deal with clients. It sounds like a person might relate to this more than just saying, don't buy into the circumstances. Rob Effie always says, don't buy into the circumstances. But This way you have the will to change that. This sounds a little softer.
I'm not exactly
Because we
following
talk,
the
because we
difference.
talk, because we,
but-
the differences, instead of just saying, you know, this is Torah. This is giving a nice little section, a little bit more Torah of how to, you know, put the line in the column, how you do it, how it's your responsibility to go in there and how you act, how you react to it is what's important. And that's how you're creating your reality.
You said one sentence that I'm curious about. You said, at this point, we can't count on Hashem.
Right.
Like, I understand it's below to above here.
Right.
We have the
Right.
free will
Right.
to have faith.
Right. Exactly.
So,
It's not built into the system. That's the big difference. That the great circle is built in.
it's
You always have access to it.
infinite Hashem.
Right. And it's always guarding you from the outside so that not everything collapses entirely.
Okay.
But at these moments when you have to eject a new circle, it's not up to Hashem, it's up to you.
That's a profound, a different
And
thought
what's
than
the-
we're used to him always being there, everywhere.
He is there, he's always holding it together,
So
meaning
you keep it
even if
level.
you're not able to, but he wants you to work. Here it's like saying that faith is a faculty, it's something that you use. It's not just something that's always there. It's also something that you have the power to employ, to apply in some way.
You said faith is not
Faith is-
bitachon, it's emunah, you can say, as
Emunah.
opposed to bitachon.
No, what it says is faith is not automatic.
did say it wasn't
Somebody, yeah, you
bitachon.
said it's not bitachon.
Bitachon.
Because before
Oh, you meant confidence?
she wanted to say confidence.
Oh, but
I said no, we're talking about faith. Now the circle is the faith. Every circle that's ejected is a state of faith in a person's life.
And what's the difference between the inner circles of faith? How do you define that? I still didn't quite catch.
That they're up to you.
But what is the experience? What are you experiencing faith in?
So that we'll see in a moment.
Is there a difference between, like, is it active faith as opposed to passive faith?
In some sense, yes. In certain sense, yeah. It's almost like the difference between active confidence and passive confidence.
But when a tzaddik like Zushan like seem to like how do you say
Hashem never did anything bad to me.
and so he wasn't trying he didn't seem to think he needs more than the broken table and the broken sphere like even if people
They're fine. They're enough for me. The thing I keep coming back to in my understanding of this is that this is the difference between a Buddhist and a Jew. The Buddhist only has the great circle. And so he can't be committed to any path really in this world. There's no line because, why? Because if there's only a line, we'll see in a moment, if there's only a line, it'll break. A line is always we'll get to this at the end of second part of chapter 4. The line is always prone to shatter, to break. A line is not a very stable entity. A circle is much more stable. So even though it seems to us that to push forward, to have confidence, is a measure of our stability, our strength, our ability, and so on, the truth is that where you gain stability and where you gain standing and steadfastness is from the faith, which is a circle, and not from the line, which is a kav. Not from the confidence, not from the pushing forward, which is like a line. The line is prone to break. That's why you have to stop it at every juncture. We'll see. There are certain points where you have to stop and you have to build a circle of faith coming out of that point. Otherwise, the whole thing will collapse.
there's such a thing as a person who's always in circles of faith that hardly have any of the push of confidence.
Like all the stories about Reb Busher is like somebody, a Jew, who's very, very directed. He knows exactly what he wants. He has all his plans. He's got a lot. The line, as we'll see, is a tzaddik, is a person who has plans and always knows what he wants to do. Every day I wake up in the morning and make a list of all the things I'm going to do.
Right.
Whether they happen or not, that's another question. But I have a plan. I know what I want to do.
So you
As it progresses, I need a lot of faith, because if I would just be doing one thing after another and there was no need for faith, it would all collapse. That's the thinking here. And we'll see in a moment why that is.
But Rabush is another example of somebody that, like, he saw certain things in his own life that were very, very, that could break a person,
Yeah.
and then he just,
And he had faith.
I'm saying.
And so they didn't break him.
He could
Creating
afford it,
circle.
but he didn't, he just kept on.
So he mamish felt like every moment he has to bring out another circle.
Right.
He mamish felt like everything here is, the line is always a symbol of Tov.
So could it be
It's a
that
it's a pasuk in Yechezkel. V'nata alea kav tov ve'avnei bohu. That Hashem, he says, cast upon it a line of chaos and stones of bewilderment. Kav tohu.
Ah, okay.
A line is always a symbol of chaos. It's always ready to break. As much as the line is how you move forward. Okay, there's Elon Musk has a company called the Boring Company. What does boring mean? So first it was a joke. It's a digging company. They make a really big digging machine. So he called it the Boring Company.
Oh.
But the line is the opposite from boring, because the line is always gaining new ground. It's always pushing forward into the void. It's going further and further in. It's what a person feels when he's creative, when he's doing things. And we said the line's the interpretation. Is the result of the inspiration I have about what I want life to be like. So it's not boring at all. But
Boring is a different, there's boring.
I know,
and there's
it was a play on words.
Yeah.
It's coming. But it's the opposite. Really, the line's the most not boring thing there is. What's boring, as it were, is the faith,
Oh,
is the circle. Because you're not doing anything. There's nothing new. But what are you doing? What would be the example if we would take the Boring Company for a moment and think about what they do? They make a tunnel, right? They dig through the earth. So every time you advance, what do you have to do? You have to make a ring around what you already dug so that it doesn't cave in. Because if you would just keep going straight, everything would shatter behind you. You have to keep putting new rings into what you've excavated to keep the tunnel open, to keep your path open.
So we've got the great circle, and then we're filling it in with all of the other little circles? Is that, or the little circles go in?
Okay, you could think about it that you have the big circle that's the opening on top, and it keeps getting thinner and thinner, as it were, until you get to the middle, or something like that. It doesn't really
I was
matter how you
thinking
imagine.
of coloring it in, so to
So,
speak, making it a solid
but think about it
color. That's
three-dimensionally,
all the
so
way
that each
around.
circle is like, think about the big circle being like this, and then you keep going down each one. Don't think about it like it's just two-dimensional.
I wasn't
Like,
at the previous show, but I'm sorry, I just want to ask, the line, it's not that the line extends from that great line, circle of light, and extends, and then you make a new circle, like a flow
no,
chart?
no.
No?
It's
Okay.
not like a chain.
Not like-
Each circle is what we
Inside,
call
It's always protected by.
lost the word. When they have the same center.
The
Concentric.
cylinder, okay.
Concentric. They're all concentric circles.
But it's interesting because Rav Osher, many years ago, I had asked something, and I really thought, what am I going to do? And he said, his one answer was, like what you're saying.
You have to have
He said,
faith.
I didn't, he said, just let it, and it seemed so crucial to know what to do. He said, just let it run its course.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy one.
No. Not at all. You have to stand your ground. But standing ground is not some passive act. It's mamish building a circle here. So if you take that example of you're burrowing down into the ground, every time that you burrow further, you bore further, you have to make a ring around it to keep it open.
Yeah, it sounded like he was saying, don't even, like, I keep on wondering when I said to you, like Reb Zusha, or, like what you said, it seems like they don't even, they're always in circles
Right.
of some sort without having to.
It could be that it's
Yeah,
so,
but
it's
you
so,
know,
every
close.
step that they take
Yeah.
is so close. That's why I said, Reb Usher,
Mhm.
certainly every moment of his life was more
Suffering.
emuna, more emuna, more
Because of
emuna.
suffering.
Apparently because he felt that, he felt the danger of everything that he was doing. A lot of people don't feel the danger. They borrow through life and they look back and they see that, wait a minute, I left
Big mess.
I left a big mess behind me. It's not open at all. There's a very easy thing to do, which is to just ignore. Okay, I made it this far. I don't care what I left behind. To be able to take everything with you throughout all of life, that's a big accomplishment. To keep it all open, and what keeps the line open all the time is faith. It allows the tunnel to remain open all the way to its source.
So like to really take a world, like not to destroy, you say give up the world can be, it can be a
Olam
mess.
met. People say that. Olam met.
Not to
Right,
say,
not to
no,
say
because at the beginning of the class you said that the way Hashem created the world is that we could, it's not like all those other worlds that had to remain and stubbornly, we're not going to exist if we don't have, but now you're saying
No.
to take the
The
world.
stubbornness was, again, this is where this all comes in. The stubbornness was that they had to have it their way.
Oh.
That's where the stubbornness was. That's why it was destroyed. But I'm flexible,
Mm.
meaning it didn't come out the way I wanted, but I didn't throw people off the side of the boat, and so that I could make progress.
Oh, but you said,
I
I
One-
can understand what you
one
said,
of-
but
one
to
of
be
the
able
worst-
to throw out.
One of the things that convinced many tzaddikim that Zionism was a big deviation from Yiddishkeit was what they said about European Jewry. When you hear it even today, I hear it, I fall apart when I hear it every single time I hear it.
What do you do?
The Jews in Chutz La'aretz don't count. And you hear, and this, I can't tell you how many times I hear this every week.
But ones that were against
Unfortunately.
Zionism?
It's a remnant from the same thinking as Zionism has, that we're creating something new, and the old just doesn't matter anymore. That is the complete opposite of Yiddishkeit. Because Yiddishkeit comes and says, whatever was is coming into the new. Even Rav Kuku, they tried to put as a Rebbe, so he had a saying, the old will renew. He never said, throw the old off the side of the boat so you could keep moving further. The Zionist leaders in Eretz Yisrael were against saving European Jewry. This is like something that you have to hear it to believe it. It doesn't mean that if they had a chance to save somebody, they would throw him into a gas chamber. It means that they didn't want to make the effort to bring them here because we want to start something new here. That type of thinking is the same type of thinking that there exists today from people, that whatever was in the Torah that existed 500 years ago has no meaning. It's not important anymore because we're writing a new Torah. Or they'll come and say the Jews if they don't move here, who cares? They're not part of what we're doing. It's so common. It's not even, and it's disgusting. But more than it's disgusting, it's a complete abomination of Yiddishkeit. They just don't understand what Yiddishkeit is.
Because you're cutting from the source.
Nothing. You can't, even if you found a new path, which is very good, the new path has to be such that everybody can pass through it. If somebody's left behind, one of the
That's
major
supposed to
sayings
be,
from the
yeah.
Rebbe, then no Jew will remain in Golus.
Right.
So if your system is such that somebody has to be left behind, you have to rethink your system. It's not the right. It's not what Hashem wants. And it's the same with your life. There's people who say, no,
Burn bridges.
I'm not saying that people don't fall off by themselves. There were people who fell off. What can I do? But the Rebbe had this saying: as long as it's alive, you can still save it.
The Rebbe jumped into the water
Once you
and
can't
saved.
cut it, once
Right.
it's dead, once you cut it off, then it's 100% dead. So never cut it off. Don't cut yourself. If somebody wants to leave for whatever reason, He doesn't want to be part of Yiddishkeit. He doesn't want to be part
But I
of
think even
Torah.
for that, the Rebbe jumped into the water for that.
I should still try to save him.
Right.
But if he decides, what can I do?
Right.
But for me to cut him off because he doesn't fit what I think it needs to be.
Well, it takes
like,
work. People don't
Beseder,
work.
but anyway, this is also true in life. It's not the things in life, the things that I had and I don't have today because they fell off of my life. They're no longer here. The
But
classic
that's good
example is that somebody has a shidduch and it doesn't work out. It didn't work out, and he married somebody else. Beseder. That's gone. It's not here anymore. If you remain with it, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, but you can still learn from it.
You learn about everything you want, but I don't have to take it with me.
You said the learning you got from it, you take.
Yeah.
Is that the Pach and Kitanim of Yaakov Avinu is also that idea?
Right, exactly. The Yaakov doesn't leave anything behind. It's exactly that. Okay, so let's continue a little bit more. This is still not the same as this is line 249. This is still not the same as passive trust, which acts through the power of think good and it will be good. This is not a thought yet. It's faith. It's also, sounds the same because you're not doing anything. You're only creating a circle, as it were, but it's coming from a very different faculty. In other words, that the faith is not
'Cause I thought-
thinking about the next step. Okay? But passive trust is thinking about the next step. It's just saying that sometimes to get to the next stage, I have to refrain from doing, I can only think. I can only paint in my head what the next stage will be like, but I can't actually do it. Okay. Maybe somebody else will do it. Maybe it's not up to me to do it. But I need to think it. I need to have good thoughts about it. That's already a state of having confidence because I'm on the line. I'm still thinking about the progress. But faith is, I'm not interested in the progress right now. Everything stopped. All the work stopped. I'm not moving forward. It's just one thing, to accept that the circumstances that have been created at this moment, they themselves are good. It's a very hard work. But that's what gives the robustness to life. That's what strengthens life. That's what prevents it from collapsing. That's what allows you to make the next step afterwards.
Which is
The faith that you have, that you bring out.
not passive faith, just faith, active.
It's like an active faith, but it's not passive confidence. Even the most active faith is not passive confidence. Okay?
Passive confidence is trachten for that, like
Good.
good.
That's just to think it'll be good. Because it's already what I want. And even in active faith, it's not what I want. It's not about what I want.
Is it bad to try to do them both together or it doesn't work?
It almost can't work because they're contradictory in a certain sense. You can do them quickly one after another, but you can't do them at the same time entirely. The mind can't even connect the two things together this way.
But active faith means I believe that what is now is the way it should be.
Okay?
And then I'm also thinking good because whatever,
No, thinking good is already having a plan. If I'm thinking about the present, confidence is always in a sense about the future. The faith here is about the present, that the present is good.
So if you kind of say to yourself, I need to mashlim myself
Right.
with what is. It's like I
Right,
have to become
right.
shalem
Lashlim.
with what is.
Right. That's.
And do you always know, like, I mean, chas v'shalom, like, do you always know the difference, like, what it is? Like, something like that,
So-
will make that.
So I said before that it seems to me that it's very clear where it is, because your reaction to it is about you, not about the environment. When I'm with confidence, acting with confidence and pushing forward, the resistance is coming from the outside. And resistance from the outside you should never cave into. That's the Rebbe's principle. Doesn't matter what the outside says. Here, what I see is that I'm providing the resistance already. I can't continue forward. Because if I could continue forward, I wouldn't feel that something was wrong. It's exactly the more you think about this mashal, when we first learned it like 6 years ago, when Miriam, if you remember, we used this mashal a lot, of boring into earth, and having to constantly build rings of cement around what you already did. But sometimes you go through a long stretch where you don't need to. Why? Because you don't feel anything's happening. The tunnel is not caving in. You're through really thick stone or whatever it is, and the stone's providing, and that would be like saying that I'm adamant, I'm strong inside, I have the strength to continue. But the moment that I feel resistance from the inside, from myself, that it seems to me that this is not good anymore. I'll give you another example. Is something that happens a lot. You're in the middle of working. In the middle of working, you work really hard. You don't notice that, let's say a guy who's working in the field, he doesn't notice that he's torn his shirt, and that he's scratched himself really hard and he's bleeding. He doesn't even know, he doesn't see it. He just works. The moment that you notice, wait a minute, what's going on here? That might be a moment, and it's resistance for you, meaning you say, I can't continue this way, like this I can't continue, then that's already a sign that you need faith. Because the resistance is now coming from the inside. Because when you were actually cut, you didn't even notice, you didn't care. Because there's nothing on the outside that should prevent you from continuing. The only thing that stops you really is the inside. And the faith is what gets you through that feeling yourself to be something. Let's explain it even more. The faith is like saying, when do I need faith? What does faith do? Faith takes away from my ego. Because I have faith in Hashem, not in myself. Confidence is confidence in myself. Confidence is a state of ego. But it's rectified ego because I'm doing what Hashem wants from me. But I overstep the bounds once in a while. And instead of just doing what Hashem wants from me, I begin to feel that this is me. Okay. And then, at that moment, is like a moment suddenly that a button shows up. And this button stops me. It's like somebody pressed my ego button. And there are two options. If I continue forward, it's going to be with ego, myself. And I will break because of that. If I stop and I subvert the ego, and I nullify it, and I come to faith, and again, the feeling is that I'm providing the resistance already. The moment the resistance is coming from me, that's a sign that I'm working with my ego already. And I'm not just doing what Hashem wants from me. Or at least I'm working with the ego in an improper way. It's not, again, all of confidence is working with the ego. That's how it works. We already said this verse a few times. Lekol hachaim yesh bitachon. The line of life has a pasuk that says that all life has confidence. But the word has in Hebrew is yesh. Lekol hachaim yesh bitachon. That you have to have a yesh, you have to be yeshut in order to bore through life. Yeah, you have to have that. But the question is whether this yeshut is a rectified yeshut, a rectified ego that does what Hashem wants from it, or has it become a self-serving ego that I'm looking for the aggrandizement and so on at the end, the feeling of satisfaction at the end and so on and so forth. The sign is that suddenly I feel that I can't go further. Something's wrong. This is not how it should have been. This is not how it should have been. How do you know how it should have been? So you're already exercising your ego, your expectations. So you have to get rid of those. And that's the moment of this active faith that returns things back to a null state. And says, it's like also this circle is like a zero. It's like a null state, it's like a zero state. bittul. But faith gives this bittul, this feeling that everything that Hashem does is good. What happened to I did this? No, I didn't do this. Because that's exactly how I got into this mess in the first place, because I started to feel it, that it was me doing this. So give it back to Hashem. And Hashem certainly does things only for good, and these things that I'm in the midst of right now. By Moshe, it says his eye never clouded. He never got a cataract. What is a cataract? When you come down to it, a cataract is the ego clouding the person's vision, so that instead of seeing straight ahead, he sees himself. He begins to see him. He begins to close into himself. So he always, Moshe Rabbeinu, he's Netzach. He is the active confidence of the world. So he's always boring forward. He never stops. And he never gets a cataract. He never needs faith, as it were. The only time he needs faith is for what? For other people. To teach other people.
What do you mean he doesn't need? I'm so confused now.
He doesn't need.
faith?
He doesn't need faith. He doesn't have moments. He always has the big circle around him. His ego is always 100% devoted to Hashem. So he doesn't need. He doesn't have these buttons. He doesn't have a hefsek in the middle. That's what it says. That Moshe lo psiktama b'gavei. There was no separation between the way Moshe is above and the way Moshe enters into the world. It's all just one long line. No buttons in the middle. No stops in the middle. It's just one long line. No, Avram had many moments of faith. Many moments when he lost it. He lost his direction. Didn't know, what am I doing next? So Hashem had to show him.
You almost
He
make
had to
it
show him
sound like
faith.
faith is a crutch.
In this sense, faith is to put me back in the position to continue forward.
Recenter you.
Wasn't it that he stopped on the Veit Hanan?
Sorry?
Veit Hanan, Moshe Rabbeinu?
Okay, Hashem made him stop. But as far as Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned, full steam ahead. There's no need to stop. He's fine. So this is a very important understanding, that the way you tell is from yourself. The moment that you feel that there's some kind of resistance on the inside, to accept this as good, to continue doing, to be in the swing of things, as one would say. So that's the sign that you need to. There's a stop sign here. It says you have to have faith now. You have to strengthen the tunnel. But this is what makes it possible to continue for you. And there's a person who doesn't have rings around this tunnel, or has 5 rings, one at the beginning of his life. In that sense, that's what it means. It says that David saw 5 rings. And there's 5 worlds. Each world, each olam is a circle. So in a certain sense, David's whole life was just 5 rings.
Like almost, I'm not lying, but Moshe Rabbeinu,
But he has 5 of them.
What?
So these are, you say these are, and they correspond to that. That's one way of saying it. That every time that a new stage of life begins, it's like saying that a new power of the soul is revealed. Okay, so let's see some more here. This is still not the same as passive trust, which acts through the power of think good and it will be good, a thought that contributes to manifesting the goodness more quickly, as explained earlier. It's just these thoughts of think good and it will be good, they're thoughts that are on the way, they're on the path. It just says that sometimes you're not doing in order to progress, you're just thinking in order to progress. But it's all about progress. Rather, each such circle represents the faith that indeed things will be good in some as yet unforeseeable future time. Active and passive confidence, I don't know why it says that statement here, I think it's wrong.
Didn't you read
I
that?
mistranslated it. So what?
So think good is passive.
Yeah, said the difference here is, it's the right translation. What he means to say is, some unforeseeable time is not beyond time. It will be in time soon, but I can't tell you when. to think good and it will be good is right away.
So that's
Because
the
it's
essence
because
of,
it's the next stage. It's right the next stage.
so that's
That's why
the
you're
essence of
confident.
our faith in
That-
Mashiach.
and that sorry?
So that's the essence of our faith in Mashiach.
Is to think good and it will be good, not to have faith. You can also have faith, but then in some unforeseeable time, but in your life. But to say that it's today, that's already to think good and it will be good. What the Rambam does, like he says, it's a principle of faith, and then he says, but you should think that he's coming every day, is sort of transferring you from faith into confidence.
Think good and
We'll talk about that in
confidence.
chapter 7. It's a big deal there in chapter 7. The Mashiach, where did Rambam learn this? From the whole interaction between Rabbi Yeshua Levi, Ben Levi, and the Mashiach, that he asked him, when are you coming? He said today. So that whole statement of what today means that we'll discuss in chapter 7, we'll see that what the Rambam did with it is that he took it on the one hand it's faith, who knows when, because faith is above time, it's not in time. And he turned it into passive confidence, which is think good and it will be good. So that's in general that's what we're doing. We're taking faith and we're turning it. And the moment you finish putting faith around yourself, the next step is to start moving forward again. So you're using the faith in order to allow yourself to progress. That's how it works.
When you write passive trust, you mean passive confidence? When
Right.
you translate
Same thing.
passive
Trust and confidence. Same thing.
Is there, I don't know if this is like a sign of, things are not good, but is there a situation where you don't really know if the resistance is inside or because outside looks so hard? And so in other words, is it because you're not moving forward because the thing that's resisting on the outside, you're like just thinking, I can't fight this, I can't do this.
Is it hard to write a novel? It's hard. And yet, you don't have to have resistance. It can be very hard, but no resistance. And each time that I need to rewrite a passage, a page, a chapter, whatever, toss it out, rewrite it, no problem. So there's no resistance inside. When there's resistance, I stop. And now I have to have faith. I see that the resistance is coming from me.
Somebody has a writer's block or something.
What they call writer's block or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Writer's block. Or just what we call Yush.
You're no longer motivated. That's when you need more faith.
I lose my motivation. So if you lost your motivation, you only lost your motivation because of your feeling of self.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really dedicated to the task, it's like Moshe Rabbeinu. There's no friction. There's no friction with himself. It's not that there's no friction with reality. There's a ton of friction with reality all the time. You're boring through reality. But that never stops anybody. If it does, it's because of inner friction inside.
So not because you lost your
It's not because I don't want the novel anymore. I do want it.
yeah, but what do you say? So but it means you lost some things. When you can't anymore, it means you lost your.
You
it
lost-
means you have too much of an ego.
No. So your friction is against yourself. You've ground yourself to a halt. It's not the mountain that's ground you to a halt. It's you yourself. The machine inside isn't working.
So that means anything on the outside that seems really hard.
It's fine. On the contrary,
It's really just how you relate.
it's even better. Bring it on. Who cares? The harder, the better. Again, if you want to move a mountain, maybe you don't have the right tools, but that's a different problem. If you have the tools for something and you know that you should be able to do something, and you're grounding to a halt every moment, so the problem is with you. So you have to build the faith first. And the faith is it's almost like to let go and say it's good. The moments, I'm skipping a line. Okay. The moments in life during which a circle is ejected are akin to moments of moving from confidence to faith. So that we said. Confidence is the hallmark of the righteous individual, the tzaddik. And so the line of life advances in an orderly manner. Why? Because the inner trait of the tzaddik is his sense of order in all aspects of hierarchy. This we talked about last week in terms of world history. But it's also true in terms of each person's individual tzaddik in them. that how do I know I'm working with my tzaddik? Because the tzaddik in me, every Jew is a tzaddik, is this ability to plan. To plan. There's a plan. So every day when I wake up, I know there's certain things that I do in the morning. I'll do this, and this. Then I come to my desk, and I have a notebook. And in my notebook, I write, today I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. As I do them, I mark them off. That's the tzaddik in me. Is he any good? We'll see as the day goes on how much of a tzaddik I really am. But the tzaddik in me always has to, every tzaddik did this. Every tzaddik has, if you're not making a plan every day, you're not a tzaddik. And every Jew has a tzaddik inside. The tzaddik, by definition, is the feeling that there's order in the world. There's what's more important and what's less important. When I make the plan, I shift it around. Because first I write all the things that I think I need to do today, and then I number them. This is most important, this is less important. I also know that I don't work full steam ahead all day long, so I need sometimes to put a smaller task in the middle to do this or do that. And if I got through 50% of what I wrote down, so I had a great day. It's a wonderful day. If I got through 20%, no. But how would I ever know if it was a good day or not if I never made the plan? If I'm only working with faith, it's like saying, well, whatever comes, comes. That's okay, but only when you're stuck. When you're stuck, when your ego is overpowered and it's grinding against itself, so then you have to say, okay, whatever there is whatever there is. But you can't start the day that way. We have to start the day with a tzaddik. I'm a tzaddik. First of all, I'm a tzaddik. After that, I'll start doing averos. I'll be less of a tzaddik and things will stop. But you have to start that way. And you have to decide what's most important. And when you're a couple, so you also have to make a weekly plan together. We have this and this and this and this to do this week. And these things, this is the list. If we got through 50% of it, we had a wonderful week. If we got through 20%, at least we did that. But if you don't make any plan at all,
Well, maybe if you got through 20%, you had a wonderful week.
could be.
Right.
Depends
So
on
why
how
going in kamut,
depending
maybe.
on how much your tzaddik is presumptuous.
No, but I'm saying the fact that I could be upset that I only gone through 15%, let's say, is a sign that I wasn't so connected. Why am I upset? 15%, I did.
So, in the country.
Okay.
It's famous. Said this many times. The Rosh Steinzel told me that the Rebbe had a plan like this for 30 years ahead of time.
Who said?
Rosh Steinzel told me that the Rebbe once told him that he had a plan for 30 years from now.
30-year plan.
30-year plan. Obviously, that wasn't the plan for every day. He didn't expect to be able to finish 30 years in one day. But
He worked towards it.
how would you know that you did it quickly or slowly? So if you make a plan for a whole year and you finish by Hanukkah, you're done. Wow. I need to make a new plan because I'm done with the old one. On the other hand, since you do hit these knobs, these buttons, these moments when you transfer from active confidence to faith, since you do hit them, so you might have to change the plan. You may need to have a different plan altogether. Why? Because the old plan's not going to work anymore.
It almost sounds like the person that is having to exercise a lot of faith is always in a backlog.
The more faith you have to exercise, the more you feel that you're making little progress. Say that. But we said that's what keeps the whole thing intact.
Moving. Right.
If it just says that what you're doing when you make progress is so great. You've got this machine that's not boring a little tiny, 1 meter hole. You're doing a kilometer big hole. So every 10 inches, you gotta. So maybe you should think. Maybe another thing is to lessen the diameter of your boring
Yeah, but some things
instrument.
can be put on a schedule. Like maybe mitzvahs for a woman, it's Shazman Brahma. Like some things could be measured. Like I could see like a person making a plan. Like let's say either somebody who is like really, let's say, working on a certain project. But if you have a child, let's say, and that child like there's layers and layers, you know, you're, let's say a mother raising a child when they're young, and then as they get older, or let's say, so it might look like nothing, in other words, no plan, and then it's like, it doesn't even, you don't even see the results sometimes, like, so what does that mean? Like, you just need faith all the time, you need faith.
With other people, you definitely need faith all the time. You can't make their plans for
like
them.
even the person, I'm saying, well, I'm going to bring an example of a woman, like, that let's say has a family and all that, she's not anymore on that kind of timeline where,
Why not?
I'm not saying, breakfast, lunch, supper, but that, I'm saying, like, if you're talking about, you know, things that, like,
No,
you know,
you have 10 things that you want to do every day. And you write them out.
yeah.
So why is that? How is that any different?
Okay, maybe
than,
I'm seeing like sometimes like the
Depends on what you want to do. If you want to introduce into these 10 things 15 more things that have nothing to do with your home, so fine. There's no reason not to.
right.
It's all up to you about what you think your machine is capable of getting through. So again, it might look like spending all my time on faith. Is that it? Maybe that's what's needed in order to keep this.
That's what your
this whole
machine
project
needs.
going. Yeah.
Maybe.
But can't you say it's like the right foot and the left foot in a way? Like, it's not like, well, today I'll be in my confidence and
No,
for the next few days.
it could be every moment. So the righteous person, he always has a sense of order in all aspects of hierarchy, time, importance, complexity, whatever it is. But when a person reaches a point in which a circle is ejected, it indicates, meaning that he has to eject a circle, it indicates that he is called upon to seek the equanimity of the circle, that all things are equal, particularly in reference to oneself. Like we said, it's all about whether, in the end, what's going to keep this all moving, what's going to keep this from collapsing, is the midat ha'ishtavut in myself. The willingness to accept that whether they praise me or they ridicule me, it's all the same. They made progress, didn't make progress, it's all the same. When called upon to equanimity, the purpose is to reach Abraham's original state of faith, wherein yes and no are equal before him. Whereas, right, because Avram was willing to do that, then Hashem lifted him out completely into the great circle. But first of all, he had to say, Hen li lo lav. Hen li lo. Yes for me is like no. Whether you say yes to me, you say no to me, it's all the same. That's equanimity. That's this circle of faith. But this is like a minor faith. It's a small faith. It's what you eject at every stage of the progress. When called upon to, or as the Baal Shem Tov taught, whether people praise me or they ridicule me is all the same to me. So these are the moments in which the robustness of my life is tested. And I need them, because otherwise everything will collapse. So that's the simple idea behind
And
it. What time is it?
stay there until it dissipates, right?
What?
I stay in that place until I feel at peace to be motivated.
Okay. What time is it?
Time.
2:30.
I have to leave in a couple of minutes. So let's just see begin the parables of line and circles. Now there's two parables, very strong parables, to understand this in how this whole thing works. We gave a parable which is like a modern parable, like boring through ground. But there are two images in Torah that give exactly this picture. The image of the descending line or ray that ejects from time to time a circle has a number of different parallels. Among these is the image of the menorah in the temple. The menorah, if turned upside down, is a central line, which as it descends, ejects two semicircles in each direction. The point at which these semicircles are ejected is known as a button, kafto, also translated sometimes as a sphere. The idea is that the button itself, Rashi says, it's like a tapuach. Looks like an apple. And the whole idea of an apple is, why is an apple called an apple? Because as opposed to other fruit, it grows from the inside out. It's tofech, it's called. It's like it's blown up from the inside. So that's how these things are formed, from the inside out. In the menorah, there are only 6 such semicircles, 3 in each direction. What?
What's the apple? Why'd you
it
Yeah.
looks like an apple. The thing that we call buttons, kaftorim, on the menorah, Rashi says they look like apples.
Okay.
The idea again being that they come from the inside out.
Okay.
Another image, this is the best image, is the spinal column. That everything we've been talking about as the line, that's the spinal column. According to the sages, the spinal column consists of 18 vertebrae, from which emanate 12 ribs on each side. Right? Not in the beginning. There's no ribs. But then as you keep going down, of these, there are 5 false ribs and 7 true ribs. That in itself is a whole issue in the Arizal, how to understand the ribs. The ribs more closely resemble a circle. And now you understand what it means that it gives you the structure. That if there was only a spinal column, only vertebra, and there wouldn't be ribs, the entire person would collapse in. Like that's what we're actually creating. The same thing as creating the form of a human being. Although the literal meaning of Eve being created from a tzela refers to a side, really the literal meaning is that she was one half of Adam. And that the popular translation suggesting that Eve was created from a rib reflects exactly the notion that the line is masculine and the circles are feminine. And so it's very interesting that, like in the subconscious of the way that people understood this tzela, which is wrong because it's like tzela mishkan, it's the side of the mishkan. That's what it means. There's even no, from what I remember, there's not even once in Chamisha Chumshei Torah the word tzela, if I remember correctly, only in Tanakh is tzela used as a rib. But I could be mistaken, it might be once. But the overwhelming majority, the 50 or 60 times that the word tzela is mentioned, it refers to it's mentioned, certainly it's mentioned in the Korbanos, it's mentioned. But the overwhelming majority is is that it's a side. But even the explanation that it's a rib is really trying to say that Eve is the faith. The circle is the feminine. Okay, so there's more to be said about that, but there's next
So
time.
maybe that's why I
have
was
to run.
thinking, like, could it be that a person is like a woman